It's been 72 days since Derek Chauvin murdered George Floyd by kneeling on his neck for nearly 9 minutes, 8 minutes and 46 seconds. But Tucker Carlson would have you believe that we have no idea how George Floyd died. What caused George Floyd's death? In a recent segment, he said the following and really revealed himself to be the trash that he is. Take a look.
On Memorial Day weekend of this year, a man called George Floyd died in police custody in Minneapolis. And America has not been the same since. It may never be the same. In the months following that incident, Floyd's death has been used to justify a nationwide convulsion of violence, destruction, looting, in some cases killing. And all of that in addition to unprecedented levels of political upheaval, the wholesale reordering of our most basic institutions. So with all of that in mind, the significance of the event in mind, it's striking how little we really know months later about how exactly George Floyd died.
Well, we don't know anything. Well, how did George Floyd die? Now, you might be wondering, well, we all saw the video, that horrific, terrible video, multiple times for multiple angles. And so what does Tucker Carlson have to say about that? We all saw Derek Chauvin's knee on George Floyd's neck. So what's the excuse here, right? Well, he just thinks you're part of cancel culture. That's what that is. Take a look.
Established news organizations state as a matter of factual certainty that Floyd was, in the words of NBC News and so many others, quote, murdered by a Minneapolis police officer. The media, meantime, aren't that curious about gathering further details, and they're actively hostile to anyone who is. Ask too many inconvenient, unauthorized questions about George Floyd, and you will be banned from the internet.
So he's trying to, mix this story up with cancel culture and basically tell you guys that your eyes are lying to you, what you saw wasn't real. And in response to a recent leak of footage showing what happened to George Floyd, Tucker Carlson tried to pretend as though George Floyd's life wasn't in danger, with cops literally pointing a gun at him as they were interacting with him. Take a look.
Yesterday, the English newspaper Daily Mail published never before seen body cam footage of George Floyd's arrest in Minneapolis. Now, by itself, the video proves nothing. Videos never do prove anything conclusively. But this one does suggest quite a bit. The footage begins with police officers confronting Floyd in his car. And from the start, it is clear this is not a typical law enforcement interaction. The officers ask Floyd to get out of the vehicle. Floyd refuses. Minutes later, police pull Floyd from his car and handcuff him. Here's a clip of what happens next.
Ouchie, man.
Are you on something right now?
No, nothing.
You acting erratic. Let's go.
Hey, man.
Let's go.
Yeah, man.
Are you on something right now? There's a reason the police officer asked that. It seems obvious that Floyd is in some kind of physical distress in the video, even before police manhandle him.
He had a gun pointed at him. If you're a black man and you have a gun pointed at your face, I would argue that you would act a little differently. If you're anyone, but especially in this country, a black man with a gun pointed at your face, it's a little difficult to act calm and pretend like it's not a giant threat. But I love how Tucker Carlson left that out of his commentary very conveniently, John, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, he's got a tough job. He has to, against everything that should be true about the natural human capacity for empathy, he has to take this incident of a guy needlessly being killed by cops and make you start to suspect and hate him. That's what he's doing. He's a white supremacist. He runs a white supremacist news show. That's what he's gonna do. And honestly, I don't know what we're supposed to expect out of him on this topic. Right. I mean, if you've been paying any attention to him for literally months now, he's shifted from one racist narrative to another. I brought up one thing that he said. This is back in June when he was saying that all of the protesters and their leaders, because they have leaders, they're organized, should all be arrested and frog marched in front of cameras like MS-13 and labeled domestic terrorists. And he said why that should happen. He said that would be their new government approved title. Once they're charged, it's official. In fact, they are literally, as a factual matter, accused terrorists, and that would change minds right away. The people destroying this country are criminals. Few are brave enough to call them that. So naturally their popularity grows. And that was him being more honest than he's used to being. He is saying, I want you to help me change people's minds about this protest, because as long as they are thought of as protesters, people won't hate them, and we need people to hate them. So we need to label them terrorists, regardless of content, specifically to change people's minds. And he has been trying to change people's minds throughout this thing about the pandemic, trying to get people to not take it seriously, and about the protest to think of those who are being brutalized as the actual perpetrators of violence.
Yeah, and one thing that I think is pretty obvious about the right wing, especially in the middle of this pandemic, is that they have no interest in relying on scientific evidence or relying on actual health experts who have the proper credentials and training to give us accurate information about COVID. But it is kind of fascinating to watch Tucker Carlson, in his mind, rely on science when it's convenient for him. Let's take a look at this final clip.
A later report showed that Floyd had a number of narcotics in his system, including more than enough fentanyl to die of an overdose. According to the autopsy, Floyd's blood contained 11 nanograms per milliliter of fentanyl. The report then notes this, quote, signs associated with fentanyl toxicity include severe respiratory depression, seizures, hypertension, coma, and death. In fatalities from fentanyl, blood concentrations are variable and have been reported as low as 3 nanograms per milliliter.
It's incredible, because any scientific evidence in regard to this pandemic has been rejected by the likes of Tucker Carlson and others on Fox News. Now, in this case, in an effort to justify what, again, we saw with our own 2 eyes, a man who was viciously murdered on the streets. And by the way, there is a consensus among almost every person in the country that George Floyd was murdered. Even Donald Trump condemned it. But Tucker Carlson all of a sudden is like, no, let me go ahead and try to justify a murder that took place in broad daylight by talking about trace amounts of whatever drug in his system. I don't care. I don't care if he had a giant amount of fentanyl in his system. Doesn't matter. What matters is what we saw. We saw a man who complied with cops. There are multiple videos showing him calmly complying with cops. We saw a video of him being choked for nearly 9 minutes straight, begging for his mother, who had already passed away years ago. And Tucker Carlson is arguing to us saying, no, that black man, he deserved it.
Yeah.
He deserved it. We don't know what killed him. We do know what killed him. He's such a piece. Anyway.
Yeah, I would take that same bit of information he was spreading and saying, oh, so you've identified that some people have a predisposition to being killed if you kneel on their neck? Okay, maybe let's not kneel on people's necks. But that's not his conclusion. His conclusion is we don't have to be bothered by the fact that someone did on video something that any rational human looks at and says, how could you possibly do that to someone else?
Every person on the planet saw what happened to Philando Castile, who had a licensed gun in the vehicle, in the glove compartment. He calmly communicated that with the cop. The cop shot him anyway. And then as his girlfriend and her young child were in the back seat, like this happened as they were in the car, right? After he gets shot, his girlfriend remains insanely calm. I mean, I don't know how she did it. I don't know how she remained as calm as she did. Her boyfriend just got shot in front of her. And they still put her in handcuffs. They still detained her. I mean, look, they're liars and they're racist, they're liars. He wants a race war in this country. People like Tucker Carlson love this kind of stuff. They love the death and the destruction. They love state-sponsored terror in this country. That's who they are. And they have a tremendous amount of influence with a giant platform where they also somehow simultaneously whine and cry about cancel culture.
Constantly, yeah. He's a racist. So when we see those sorts of videos, it kills us inside. He doesn't care, but he's also a rich fascist. And so he wants a police state that is going to brutalize the sort of people that he fears will someday pull him out of his mansion. Like he lives in fear that the insane, broken, twisted system that he is now benefiting from and helps to prop up with his media platform will eventually come down, and he's worried that when that happens, he'll be killed. And he wants if it's the police, if it's DHS, if it's the military, whatever, keep order by whatever means necessary. It's never gonna negatively impact me. I have all of the power and influence I could possibly ever want. It's only going to affect the sorts of people that I don't give a damn about anyway.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.